It was 3 in the morning when I heard desperate knocks at my door. When I opened it, my daughter collapsed into my arms, bruised, bleeding, and barely conscious. Through her sobs, she told me her husband had beaten her, and the reason was another woman, his lover. In that moment, I was no longer just her mother, I was her protector. I carried her inside, treated her wounds, and swore I would fight for her. That night marked the beginning of a battle I never imagined I would face. It was the night I realized the man who promised to care for her was nothing but an abuser, and I would do whatever it took to make sure he paid for what he did. This is the story of how a mother turned her pain into strength, and how the fight for my daughter's safety became the fight of my life. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, because when you stop doing this, YouTube understands that you don't like this content and stops recommending good stories like this. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. It was 3 in the morning when I heard loud and desperate knocks at my front door. At first I thought I was dreaming, but the sound kept coming, sharp and fast, like someone begging for help. My heart raced as I got up and walked quickly through the hallway. When I opened the door, I saw my daughter, Sarah. She collapsed into my arms before I could even say a word. Her body was trembling, and she had barely enough strength to stand. I held her tightly and noticed right away how badly she was hurt. Her face was swollen, one side covered in dark bruises. Her lips were split and bleeding. I could feel her whole body shaking against me. She tried to speak, but only managed broken words between sobs. Then she whispered the truth that made my stomach turn. "Mom, he hit me, all because of her, the other woman." My chest tightened, and I felt like I couldn't breathe. I pulled Sarah inside quickly and locked the door behind us. She was so weak I had to guide her step by step to the couch. She winced with pain each time she moved, and I could see more bruises hidden under her sleeves. Every mark I uncovered felt like a knife cutting into me. I couldn't stop myself from asking questions, but she was too shaken to say much. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying, and her voice trembled every time she tried to speak. I went to grab a towel and some water, carefully wiping the blood from her mouth. I felt both angry and helpless, wishing I could take away her pain instantly. I wanted to wrap her in safety and never let anyone hurt her again. My hands were shaking as I tried to stay calm, but deep down, I was boiling with rage at what he had done. I picked up the phone and called the hospital, explaining that my daughter needed urgent care. While waiting for help to arrive, I sat by her side, holding her hand tightly. Her phone lay on the coffee table, and suddenly it started buzzing non-stop. At first I ignored it, but Sarah flinched every time it vibrated. I picked it up and saw a flood of messages from her husband. They weren't apologies or pleas for forgiveness. They were threats, ugly words, full of anger, promising more violence if she ever dared to leave or speak up. My stomach churned, and I could see the fear written all over Sarah's face as she begged me not to answer. She looked terrified, like a prisoner who had finally escaped, but still felt the chains on her wrists. I wanted to throw the phone against the wall, but instead, I set it down carefully, keeping my emotions hidden for her sake. Sarah leaned against me, whispering that she didn't know what to do. She was terrified of going back, terrified of what he might do next. She kept saying, "He'll find me, Mom. He always finds me." Her words broke me. I brushed her hair back gently and told her she wasn't alone anymore. Every tear rolling down her cheek felt like it belonged to me, too. I listened as she tried to explain how the fight started, how his anger exploded when she mentioned the affair he was having. The more she spoke, the more I realized how much she had been holding in. This wasn't the first time he had hurt her, but tonight was worse. Tonight, she had finally reached her breaking point, and so had I. I promised her, right there on the couch, that I would never let him touch her again. As I sat holding my daughter, my mind began racing. I wasn't just her mother, I was also a police officer. I had spent years dealing with cases like this, helping other women escape men who thought they owned them. I knew the system, I knew the laws, and I knew the danger. But this time, it was personal. It wasn't just another case file on my desk. This was my child, my flesh and blood. I couldn't let fear or hesitation control me. I had to act. The bruises on her face, the threats on her phone, the tears in her eyes, everything screamed that if I didn't do something now, he would break her completely. I felt a fire building inside me, stronger than the fear, stronger than the anger. I wasn't going to wait for him to show up at her door again. The hospital was on its way, but in that moment, sitting there in the quiet living room with Sarah in my arms, I made a decision. I wasn't just a mother comforting her injured child. I was also a protector, someone trained to fight back against men like him. I looked at Sarah's swollen face and thought, no more. He won't win this time. My heart ached, but my resolve grew sharper. I squeezed her hand and told her she was safe now, that I wouldn't let him destroy her. And deep inside, I knew I meant it. I wasn't only her mom anymore. I was her shield, her defender, and I was ready to fight for her with everything I had. I would not allow my daughter's life to be ruined, not while I was still standing. After we left the hospital and finally came home, I couldn't sleep. My body was tired, but my mind wouldn't stop. I watched Sarah lying in her bed, breathing slowly, her face still marked with bruises. She looked so small, so fragile, and yet she had endured so much. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her falling into my arms again at the door, bloody and broken. I sat there for a long time, listening to the silence of the house, feeling both helpless and furious. I knew I had to do something more. Rest wasn't an option. That man, Robert, thought he could crush her, and I wasn't going to sit back and let it happen. So I got up, put on my jacket, and stepped outside into the night. I walked straight to my neighbor Camilla's house, hoping she could help me prove what he had done to Sarah. Camilla opened the door, looking half asleep, but when she saw my face, she knew something was wrong. I asked her if I could see the recordings from her security cameras, and she didn't hesitate. Together, we sat in front of her screen, and there it was, footage of my daughter pounding on my door at 3 a.m, crying, begging for me to open. My chest tightened as I watched. Her fear, her desperation, everything was captured in those images. It made my blood boil, but at the same time, I felt relief. This was evidence, undeniable proof of what she had gone through. Camilla squeezed my hand and told me she'd testify if needed. I thanked her, took the files, and left. Walking back to my house, I felt like I carried more than just a USB drive in my pocket. I carried a weapon against the man who had nearly destroyed my daughter. Back in my room, I didn't waste a second. I pulled open the closet and grabbed my police uniform. Sliding into it felt different that night. It wasn't just work clothes, it was my armor. I buttoned it up carefully, one piece at a time, feeling stronger with each movement. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was an officer ready for battle. Then I took out my phone and started documenting everything. I photographed Sarah's face, her swollen lips, the bruises on her arms and legs. I cataloged each picture, labeling and saving them into folders on my computer. Every cut, every mark was a piece of the puzzle. It was painful, but necessary. Each photo meant he couldn't hide, couldn't lie his way out of this. He would have to answer for every single injury he had caused her. I told myself that no matter how long it took, I'd see this through. Once I had everything saved and organized, I grabbed the phone and called James, our family lawyer. He was a good man, tough in court, and always prepared for a fight. When he answered, his voice was groggy, but I didn't waste time with explanations. I simply said, "We start now." There was silence for a moment. Then he asked, "What happened?" My voice cracked as I told him Robert had attacked Sarah again, and that she was at the hospital. James didn't need to hear more. He said he'd prepare the paperwork and meet me in the morning. Just hearing his calm, firm tone steadied me. I wasn't doing this alone. I had an ally, someone who knew the system and would stand with us. Hanging up, I felt the weight of the night settle on my shoulders, but I also felt clarity. The fight had begun. It wasn't just about anger anymore. I thought about revenge, yes, but what I wanted most was justice. Robert had crossed a line, and now he would pay for it. This wasn't going to be a quiet matter swept under the rug. I had the evidence, the witnesses, the bruises that spoke louder than any words. And I had my badge. For years, I had sworn to protect people who couldn't protect themselves. I had faced violent men before, men who thought they could control and silence women. But this time, it wasn't just another victim. It was my daughter. I couldn't separate the police officer in me from the mother in me. They had fused into one force. Every ounce of fear I had was replaced with a new fire burning inside me, a fire that wouldn't die until justice was done. That night changed everything. I knew I couldn't go back to who I was before. My life now had a clear purpose: to stand up against Robert, no matter the cost. It didn't matter if it meant sleepless nights, endless legal battles, or even putting myself in danger. Nothing mattered more than protecting Sarah. As I sat in the dark, files spread out on the table, I realized my destiny had been sealed in that very moment. I had promised myself long ago to defend the innocent, but I had never imagined the innocent would be my own child. I looked over at her sleeping peacefully, unaware of the storm building outside those walls, and I whispered a vow to myself: he won't destroy you. Not now, not ever. That was the night my anger became determination, and my determination became the start of the fight of my life. We needed more proof. That night, I left Sarah at home where she was safe, and I went out to watch Robert. I parked my car a short distance from a small bar and sat quietly. I kept my phone out but stayed low, eyes on the street. It felt strange to be on stakeout, but I had done it before at work. The truck rolled up and parked near the curb. I saw him get out and pause, looking around like he was checking for someone. A woman walked out of the bar and hurried across to him. When she reached him, they hugged, then walked together toward a cheap hotel a few blocks away. I followed at a safe distance, careful not to be seen. My heart pounded with each step, but I knew I had to get pictures. Every minute I stayed outside was another chance to catch him in the act. I watched them reach the hotel and waited in the shadows while they went inside. I checked my camera and prepared to take photos. When they came out shortly after, they moved slowly, not rushed. I raised my camera and began to snap pictures. I took a photo of him opening his truck door and another of the two of them getting in. I zoomed in to catch faces and details. I made sure to get the license plate number. I took pictures of the time on my phone next to the plate photo so we could prove when it happened. Each click of the camera felt heavy. I felt guilty, like I was betraying someone. But this was for Sarah. Every shot was a piece of the truth. I stayed long enough to be sure the images were good before I left. Driving back home, I kept checking the photos to make sure they showed what I needed still. When I got home, I uploaded all the photos and watched each one with full focus. I saved backups and labeled every file with date and timestamps. I printed images and put them in a folder for court. The pictures showed him opening his truck, Denise stepping toward him, and both of them getting inside. I captured the hotel sign and a clear photo of the truck license plate with the time right next to it. I checked the plate against public records to make sure it belonged to him. I wrote notes about where I had waited and what I had seen that night. I asked Camilla to keep her copy of the camera footage and be ready to testify if needed. Looking at the images made me sick, but each picture felt like another step toward exposing his lies. I knew these photos would give us strong evidence to use when we faced him. I felt ready. I went to James the next morning and handed him the folder with the photos. He looked at each image and checked the license plate and timestamps. When he saw the plate and the hotel shot, he said this was solid evidence. James explained we could use the photos for protective orders and in court. He also mentioned witness statements and Camilla's camera footage backing our case. I felt relief and anger at the same time as he outlined the steps. This was not about revenge anymore. It was about keeping Sarah safe and getting justice. James promised to prepare paperwork quickly and move to protect us. He asked me to keep the photos safe and not discuss them outside yet. I knew the photos would make it hard for him to lie. I felt we had real ammunition to expose his lies now if necessary. After the meeting with James, I went home with a clear plan of tasks to start. I matched the photos to messages and made a simple timeline of what happened that night. I stored copies of the images in a safe place and gave one set to Camilla. I listed possible witnesses and wrote down what each could say to support our case. My anger had changed into steady determination, and I began to prepare for the fight. I practiced how I would speak about the truth in court and how to protect Sarah from more harm. I explained the plan to my daughter, and she rested easier knowing I was acting. She was still healing, and her trust in me made my determination stronger every day. I knew hearings and tough questions would come, but I felt ready to face them and fight for her. I reached out to a trusted colleague for guidance and support right away today. I moved quickly in the days after, following the plan I had set in motion. I filed paperwork with James, and we prepared protection requests and an evidence packet for court. I kept Sarah close and collected medical notes and hospital statements for proof. Camilla gave a formal witness statement about her camera footage and agreed to testify. I listed other people who might confirm Robert's behavior and where he had been. Every step was meant to limit his options and protect Sarah from retaliation. My police training helped me stay organized when fear tried to take over. I practiced my testimony and how to answer questions aimed at blaming my daughter. Each action felt like another move to remove the lies he had built around his image. I showed the images and the timeline to James again, and we both felt the case was strong. I promised to protect Sarah and fight until it ended. The truth was recorded. In the middle of the fight for justice, I got an unexpected letter from the notary's office. At first, I thought it was just another routine document, something I could deal with later. But when I opened the envelope and started reading, my blood ran cold. The notice said the family lands, property that had been in my family for generations, had been transferred into someone else's name. I checked twice, thinking I had misunderstood, but there it was, clear as day. Denise, Robert's mistress, was now listed as the owner. My hands shook as I looked over the paperwork. That land wasn't just property. It was my father's legacy, a piece of our history, something we had fought and worked hard to preserve. The more I read, the more I realized this wasn't an error. It was fraud. Robert had taken it upon himself to forge papers and steal what never belonged to him. I sat down at the table and went through the documents one by one. At first, I looked for mistakes, maybe something that could explain it, but then I saw the signatures. My name was on the papers, along with Sarah's, but I knew instantly they weren't ours. They were poorly copied, shaky versions of our real signatures. The more I studied them, the more furious I became. Not only had Robert hurt my daughter physically and emotionally, but now he was going after the one thing that tied us to our past. It felt like he wanted to erase everything we had built, everything my father had worked his entire life for. I couldn't believe the level of his betrayal. It wasn't enough for him to cheat, lie, and abuse. He had to steal from us too. That moment, sitting at the table with those fake papers in my hands, I felt a new kind of anger rising inside me. The next morning, I gathered every copy of the documents, placed them carefully in a folder, and drove straight to James's office. He was already expecting me for updates about the case, but when I laid the papers on his desk, his eyes widened. He read through each page carefully, his brow furrowing deeper with every line. Finally, he looked up at me and said firmly, "This puts him in a corner. Fraud of this kind is serious." Hearing those words gave me a mix of relief and fury. Relief because it meant we had even more evidence to fight him, but fury because I couldn't believe how far Robert had gone. James assured me he would file immediately and bring this to the judge's attention. He said the false signatures alone could get Robert into deep legal trouble. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of hope that justice might catch up with him faster than he expected. Driving back home, I couldn't stop thinking about what those lands meant. They weren't just dirt and grass. They were the heart of our family, the symbol of sacrifice and work that went back to my grandfather and even earlier. I remembered being a child, running across those fields, hearing my father say, "One day, this will be yours, and you'll pass it to your children." That promise had always been in my mind, and now I saw how Robert had tried to destroy it. It wasn't just about money or property. It was about erasing a part of who we were. The betrayal cut deeper than I could explain. He had taken my daughter's safety, her trust, and now he was trying to take her future too. I felt the weight of everything on my shoulders, but I also knew that I couldn't let him win. Not now, not ever. When I got home, I didn't just throw the documents on a shelf. I opened the safe in my room and placed everything inside, locking it up carefully. I knew Robert couldn't get to them there. I sat on the edge of the bed and thought about what needed to happen next. I couldn't hide behind lawyers and paperwork forever. At some point, I would have to face him directly. Part of me dreaded the moment, but another part of me craved it. I wanted to look him in the eye and let him know I saw through every single one of his lies. This wasn't just about Sarah anymore. It wasn't just about betrayal in a marriage. It had grown into something bigger, a war against a man who thought he could take everything from us and get away with it. I wasn't afraid of that fight. I was ready for it. By the end of the day, I had made up my mind. I stood in front of the mirror, still wearing my uniform from earlier, and told myself that this wasn't only about protecting my daughter anymore. This was about defending my family's legacy, my father's memory, and everything Robert had tried to destroy. He had crossed lines I never thought possible. He had shown that his greed and cruelty had no limits. Looking at my own reflection, I felt the weight of the battle ahead, but I also felt stronger than I had ever been. I knew the road wasn't going to be easy, but I was determined. No matter how long it took, I would bring Robert down. And as I closed the safe with the documents inside, I told myself that the fight had changed. It wasn't just a family dispute anymore. It was war against a man who had gone too far. The pressure around me was getting worse every single day. People in the neighborhood were starting to whisper whenever I walked past. Some avoided me, while others just stared as if I was making everything up. I heard the lies Robert was spreading, telling everyone that I had invented the whole story, that Sarah's bruises were exaggerated, that I was using my badge to frame him. It made me sick, but worse than that, I could feel how rumors were taking root in the community. Some neighbors even sent me messages warning me to stop, telling me I was going too far. A few went as far as to threaten me, saying I'd regret trying to destroy Robert's name. I knew exactly where those threats were coming from, but I didn't show fear. Inside, though, I felt the weight of being isolated, as if he was turning everyone against me. The fight was starting to look like me against the world. In the middle of all this, James kept reminding me not to give in. He told me to stay focused, that public opinion didn't decide justice, evidence did. One afternoon, during a tense meeting in his office, he leaned forward and said something that stuck with me. Denise might be the key. At first, I doubted it. She was the woman who had been part of my daughter's suffering, the one standing beside Robert while he destroyed everything we had. But James explained that sometimes the weakest link wasn't the enemy. It was the way to bring the enemy down. He reminded me that Denise had been promised things, and most likely she wasn't getting what she thought she would. If I could reach her, maybe she would flip. The idea stayed with me all night. I hated it, but deep down, I knew James was right. Denise might be the only person who could finish what we had started. The next evening, I decided to confront her. I knew where she liked to hang out, so I drove to the small bar she often visited. I sat in my car for a while, watching people go in and out, until I finally spotted her at a corner table, sipping a drink and talking on her phone. My heart was pounding, but I walked inside and headed straight to her table. She looked surprised when I sat down across from her without asking. Before she could speak, I pulled out a folder with documents I had prepared. Calmly, I slid the papers across to her. She raised her eyebrows, smirked, and said, "What's this supposed to be?" I kept my voice steady, though inside, I was ready for anything. "These are copies of the fraud Robert committed, and your debts. If you stay on his side, you'll go down with him. If you tell the truth, you might save yourself." Her face changed instantly. At first, she let out a shaky laugh, like she thought I was bluffing. She leaned back in her chair, trying to act casual, but I could see the nervous tapping of her fingers on the table. I didn't move. I just watched her, waiting. Slowly, the color drained from her face as she flipped through the pages. I had copies of the false land transfers, her name tied to debts, and evidence of how Robert had used her as a pawn. She bit her lip and avoided my eyes, and that's when I knew I had hit the right nerve. She whispered, almost to herself, "He promised me those lands. He said it was all legal." Her voice cracked. She looked up at me, and for the first time, she wasn't smirking. She was scared. She realized Robert hadn't just lied to us. He had lied to her too. The silence between us felt heavy, like she was deciding her future right there. After a long pause, Denise finally admitted the truth. Her hands were trembling as she pushed the papers back toward me. She told me Robert had convinced her that everything was under control, that he had guaranteed her part of the land if she kept quiet. But instead of helping her, his promises had left her drowning in debt and stuck in a situation she couldn't escape. She said she had started to realize something was wrong, but she hadn't wanted to believe it. Now, with the proof right in front of her, she couldn't deny it anymore. Her voice broke as she said, "I can't do this anymore. I'll testify. I'll tell the court what he did, everything I know." I stared at her for a moment, making sure she was serious. When I saw the fear and shame on her face, I knew she was telling the truth. It was the first real crack in Robert's armor. I walked out of that bar feeling lighter than I had in months. For the first time since this nightmare began, I wasn't standing alone. Denise, the woman Robert had used to humiliate and control my daughter, was now willing to turn against him. The same woman he paraded around as proof of his power was about to become the evidence that could destroy him. It was a strange kind of relief, but also a reminder of how desperate he had become, pulling everyone into his web of lies. As I got into my car and looked at the folder of documents still in my bag, I realized something had shifted. The game wasn't his anymore. Robert had thrived on control, but now he was losing it piece by piece. For the first time, he wasn't the one calling the shots. The very woman he thought was his weapon was going to be the reason for his downfall. The day of the trial finally arrived, and I woke up earlier than usual, my stomach in knots. Sarah was nervous, and I could see it in the way her hands shook while she tried to get dressed. I helped her carefully, picking out a simple outfit that covered most of the bruises still healing on her skin. I made sure her sleeves went down far enough and her scarf hid the marks on her neck. She looked at me in the mirror, her eyes filled with fear, and whispered, "Do you think they'll believe me?" I hugged her tight and told her the truth. They won't just believe you. They'll see it with their own eyes. We left the house in silence, both of us trying to stay strong, but every step toward that courthouse felt heavier than the last. It was the moment we had been fighting for, and nothing could stop it now. When we arrived, the courtroom was packed. Friends, neighbors, and strangers sat shoulder to shoulder, some curious, others genuinely concerned. I could feel eyes on us as we walked in, and I held Sarah's hand the entire way to our seats. The judge entered, and the session began. One by one, James presented the evidence we had gathered. The photos of Sarah's injuries flashed on the screen, followed by the medical reports that confirmed every bruise and cut. Then came the video from Camilla's camera. The sound of Sarah pounding on my door in the middle of the night filled the room. Her voice crying for help echoed through the silence, and people shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some even began to sob quietly. It wasn't just evidence anymore. It was raw, undeniable truth. Watching Sarah's pain replayed for everyone to see tore me apart, but it was necessary. We had to expose everything Robert had done. Robert's lawyer jumped up next, trying desperately to twist the story. He called us liars, said Sarah was making it all up for attention, and accused me of using my position as a police officer to fabricate evidence. His words cut through the air like knives, but I could see the desperation behind them. It was clear he was running out of ground to stand on. Just when it seemed like his attacks might leave a shadow of doubt, Denise rose from her seat. All eyes turned to her. She looked pale, nervous, but determined. Her voice trembled at first, but then she spoke clearly, admitting everything. She told the court about Robert's lies, the fake promises, the fraud with the land, and how he had manipulated her with empty words. The room erupted in whispers and gasps. People turned to look at Robert, and for the first time, he didn't look confident. He looked cornered. My turn came next. I stood and faced the courtroom, my heart pounding but my voice steady. I spoke first as a mother, describing the night my daughter arrived at my door, broken and bleeding, begging for help. I explained the fear in her eyes, the threats from Robert's messages, and the way her life had been torn apart by his violence. Then I spoke as a police officer, explaining the fraud, the false papers, the evidence we had collected, and the clear pattern of abuse. I didn't raise my voice, but I made sure every word was strong and direct. Finally, I looked at the judge and said, "This man is not a husband. He is an abuser." The silence afterward was heavy. Every ear in that room tuned in to my words. It was the truth laid bare, with no excuses left to cover it. I could feel the weight of the room shift. The judge took his time before speaking. The room was silent, except for Sarah's quiet breathing beside me. When he finally read the decision, every word hit me like a wave of relief. He granted Sarah a full protection order, annulled the fraudulent land transfer, and froze Robert's assets. He said the evidence was overwhelming, and the testimonies left no doubt. Sarah gripped my hand so tightly I thought she might cut off my circulation, but I didn't mind. I felt her tears dripping onto my arm, tears of relief, of release. Around us, people nodded. Some whispered to each other, and I knew they finally understood the truth. Robert sat frozen in his chair, his face pale, his control slipping away completely. For once, the power was no longer his. The law had spoken, and this time, it was on our side. As we left the courthouse, the air outside felt different. Reporters tried to approach us, but I kept Sarah close and guided her past them. A woman from the crowd called out, "Justice has won!" and others murmured in agreement. Sarah leaned against me, exhausted but lighter than I had seen her in weeks. I knew this wasn't the end of our pain. Healing would take time, and the scars, both visible and invisible, would remain with her. But for the first time, we had something solid to hold on to: justice. Walking down those courthouse steps, I felt a mix of exhaustion and strength. We had faced Robert head-on and exposed him for who he truly was. This was just the beginning of our recovery, but I knew in my heart that we had finally turned the page. Justice had spoken, and we were ready to start healing. Finally, we've reached the end of this story. I'm extremely happy that you've made it this far. Thank you very much for watching. Comment below what you thought and what was the best or worst part. Don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.